NGOs to list their funders, to list the donors to their NGO organization. For many smaller NGOs, it's not as common, but still, we've looked at donors in for NGOs, grassroots NGOs in India, Nepal, in countries in Africa, etc., and we can often find lists of donors.
Yeah, it can be a bit of a challenge, but I've always been able to find some national or grassroots NGOs that list their donors. So it can take time, but again, it's a free way to do some initial research. And once we've kind of started doing research, it's important to make sure you organize that research so that all your hard work is put to use. So here's an example of a prospect table, or you can make a list or something like that. This is just what we use with some sample headings, the name of the donor, so we see this is filled out for the Gates Foundation, maybe the website, some of the focus areas. We rank donors so you know how to prioritize and which donors to start researching first. Also, you find contact information, application information, any additional notes, and most important, a column on action. What are you going to do with this data? Who is responsible? Are you going to contact this donor? When are you going to do that? Who has to do that? Do they need to send a proposal? Things like that could go in that action column. So definitely organizing your data is very important. And then once you've kind of started filling that document out, you start with the donors you have, the ones you know, the ones you've done some research. You can do additional research, as we saw that in the poll. Some people do use online databases. What we're looking at here, this is the Foundation Center, a map of direct grants to non-U.S. recipients. This is a free map, so this is useful to all of our participants outside the U.S. Sorry about, if you're in the U.S., you can go to the Foundation Center library for free. So I just have us on the internet right now. We're looking at the map, and you can see the dark colors are where the most money is going. So let's say if we wanted to click on India, we could see that there's quite a bit of money going to India. It is a little bit slow. Okay, so we just got it over $700 million went to over 1,000 NGOs that are based in India with over 3,000 grants. You can see the organizations, the recipient names, how much money they got, the grants, so it's very interesting.
Megan, a lot of grassroots or smaller NGOs say there are so few small grants going to NGOs. And is that really the case? Because you see very large
It can definitely
grants.
seem like that, because I think the ones you hear about are always the Gates Foundation gave $100 million, and you think, okay, well, that's not helpful for me. But if we're scrolling down through India, we're still kind of, since there's so many NGOs in India getting funding from U.S. foundations, we're getting to the bottom here, and we do see that like $10,000, a lot of all these NGOs got one grant for $10,000 on this page that we're looking at, so you can see that, and I see even here for $1,000, something like that. So there really is, across the range, there is opportunity from funders for whatever types of funding you require.
Yeah, and we have it on Funds for NGOs on the resource section of the website. There's a very short guide on small grants funding, which is helpful, I think, to NGOs. And we did some research on U.S. foundation giving to small NGOs, and we found that when we researched Tanzania as an example, we found that well over a quarter of grants were small grants, less than $10,000. So it's very common, actually, for foundations to give smaller grants.
Yeah, absolutely. And some other resources just to quickly show you. NOSA Search is another free website you can use. You just have to register for it to research U.S. foundations for free. We see a question here from Jason who wants to know, is there something similar to the Foundation Center in Europe? And there is, to an extent, I'm not going to talk about it a ton, but just to show you, individual European countries have their own resources. So the Charity Commission in the UK, you can do a search for any type of charities in the UK, including trusts, which are the ones that give grants. Also in France, there's a French Foundation Center. We're looking at it here. You can just use Google Translate to search for your field of action. Maybe you want to do a search. I think international relations would probably be the most relevant to to charities outside of France. Here's one in Germany, again in German, but you could use Google Translate to do searches. Here's one on international understanding. to find these foundations. And finally, just to show you also, there's one, this is the Swiss Foundation Center, and this is in French or German. Again, you can translate. Look, I could search here for Africa, Afghanistan, different countries. So these are some good resources. We can't get into it, unfortunately, too much today, but if you're interested in more, Funds for NGO does do a webinar on prospect research. We're actually doing one on November 15th, which is tomorrow, for any of you guys attending live. But you can also see on the website there's some more information you can possibly on webinars.fundsforngos to find more about this and some of the resources. Really quick, I also see a question from Patricia who wants to know about a database in Holland. There is one. It's called Fonzadisk.
Yeah, it's an offline diskette that you can get from the I believe it's the Association of Foundations, and they have a diskette and a book you can order online, and it's a CD-ROM actually with a database. I think it only has about 7, the latest version. I have it here, 2012. I think it has 700 and something, 737 foundations, and I know there are many, many more in the Netherlands. But if you Google search, you will find some other resources for foundations in the Netherlands. One problem with Europe is that it's by country. Yep. Not all countries have a database. The databases are not very comprehensive sometimes, so it is a lot of work to go through all of that. Our suggestion typically is just start at the beginning. Don't worry too much. If you look at the US, if you look at NGOs that are similar to yourself, and you look at those types of the donors that fund them, and you start creating those lists, then you will get a very long list very, very quickly.
Thanks, Eric. So I think we'll move on to our next topic here. We got a bunch of questions on strategy. So let's start a quick poll again, everyone, if you want to. Does your organization have a fundraising plan? So just a simple yes, no. If you just look at your poll question on your screen, select yes if your organization has a fundraising plan, and no if your organization doesn't have a current fundraising plan. We'll just take a few more seconds to give everyone a chance to vote, yes or no, whether or not you have a fundraising plan. And let's close the poll, and we'll share the results with everyone. So we see it's almost split. 53% of organizations here today do not have a fundraising plan, and 47% do have a fundraising plan.
Well, that's very interesting, and let's talk about that a little bit, because we did get quite a few questions that had to do with fundraising planning. Megan, here's one.
Yeah, we have a question here from Wilma who wants to know what are the differences in fundraising strategies in cases of different thematically oriented NGOs. We also have questions here. How do I organize all my information from Laura? What if we don't have fundraisers on staff from Andrea? A question from Sahara Charitable Organization. Should we use organizational software to manage our donor management? And then we have a question from Robert about, can we use consultants and how should we compensate them? So quite a different range of questions on this topic. So
yeah, those are all great questions. And I think let's just talk about fundraising planning in general terms. I do think having a fundraising plan, or at least a very short maybe otherwise a fundraising component in your organizational strategic plan is very important, because you want to know where you're at, you want to know where you're going, and you want to develop like a map on how you're going to get there. And I've worked on the program side as well. I've worked in child labor and in immunization and in human rights. And on the program side of your work, you will do exactly the same. You will set yourself some goals, you will define the problem, you will make some type of assessment or SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats, if you will, and then you will decide on a strategy on how to reach your goal. And with fundraising, it's exactly the same. I think it is very important to map that out. And there are a couple of steps. I'll keep it kind of simple, but and we do have a webinar specifically on this at Funds for NGOs as well, so you might want to look into that. But just the basic steps are, first you need to know what are your organizational strengths and weaknesses, what are some of the gaps in your fundraising, and then the external environment, what are some of the funding opportunities and what are some of the threats. And here's an example, and later you can go back to the recording and take a look at it, but this is a very basic example. And so internal strengths could be, oh, I have a fundraiser on staff who's very good, or we have a reserve fund, we have some funding reserves, or we have very good relationships with a number of donors that are already funding us. And weaknesses, I don't have a fundraiser on staff, it could be something like that, or we haven't done any prospect research, we haven't researched donors, etc. Then the opportunities and threats are more external, like there's less funding coming in for my program. And I can tell you, we were in Bhutan working with a bunch of NGOs there, and Bhutan, a small country in the Himalayas, and they had issues there because the donors were withdrawing from Bhutan. I know the Danes were closing their office, so that's actually that's a threat, of course. Donors could be pulling out, and that's not something you can control as an NGO, but that's something that you need to be aware of, and you need to plan for that. So then you have to find alternatives. For example, an opportunity could be that all of a sudden donors are very interested in your theme or your program, or that there are better opportunities in your country. For example,